And now, it's Coast Vue with Ricky Mathews. Brought to you by J. Allen Toyota and AGJ Systems and Networks on SuperTalk 103.1 FM.
Welcome to Coast Vue, the show that every single day celebrates the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi such a special place to live, work, and play. And every now and then we get an opportunity to really celebrate one of our native sons who've gone off to do amazing things. And listen, I'm not going to read a bunch of quotes this morning or give you a bunch of speeches. I'm just going to go straight to my new friend Ross Dellenger and just say good morning. And we'll as we get into this conversation, people are going to learn a lot about you, Ross. But how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, Ricky. I appreciate you having me on.
So let's start with this because people will sort of get a sense of who you are. But you know, your dad, we know your dad well. He's been a coach for many years. He's an award-winning coach both in track for girls and boys. He's been a football coach. He's been involved in so many different ways. But you know, the Dellenger family. When you just hear Dellenger, you think Biloxi. Growing up in Biloxi and being the son of Stan Dellenger and your mother, tell me what stands out most in your life.
Gosh. Wow, it's a loaded one. I don't, I go back to growing up with my dad and traveling with him for football games, and being in the locker room at the old Mercy Cross and St. Stanislaus and Bay St. Louis, and riding in the buses and being on the sideline and just being around the team, and that's kind of how I developed a passion for sports. I tried to play it at Mercy Cross for a couple of years. I wasn't big enough. I wasn't fast enough, and I couldn't catch. So that's a problem. So I decided to start writing about it instead. And my first job was down there as a senior in high school, kind of doing part-time covering high school football for the Iberville Press. I think it was a weekly newspaper down there. And, so that kind of got me started and I couldn't ask for better parents and a better family in a better place to grow up. I love the coast and I go back quite a bit. I live in DC now, but I go back, as often as I can to see family and be on the water and all that stuff. It's still a special place to me.
Well, you're now a national football writer for Sports Illustrated. And as you know, I was publisher at the Sun Herald, publisher in New Orleans, publisher in Mobile. Was last 16 years of my career as a president publisher of some media company. And so I understand the digital age. It's been interesting following Sports Illustrated because they sort of, wax and wane as they kind of define what their digital strategy is going to be. But you're hiring you and one or two others was really kind of a statement that they were making that they were going to get pretty serious about national college football. You had been writing, I think, for the Baton Rouge Advocate for about 5 years, doing LSU. I think that number is correct. But it's got to feel awesome to be at Sports Illustrated now.
Yeah, it is. It's certainly humbling. As far as my track record, I went to Mississippi State for college and then started as an intern in Jackson, Mississippi, an AP News intern. And I remember was during that internship, the Sun Herald had a job opening for a business writer. It was to cover casinos. I think it was mainly casinos and gaming. And I had a scheduled interview to come down there to interview for that job. And at the last minute, I thought, I can't do news. I don't want to do news. I want to do sports. And so I remember calling whoever it was and saying I couldn't come down. And then not too long after that, I covered, got a job covering Auburn for a newspaper in Alabama. And that was my first big sports beat writing job. Then I returned to the Clarion Ledger where my wife and I got married in Jackson. She was working for the Clarion Ledger and I worked there for 4 years, did high schools in Jackson State. And then we moved to Missouri. We both worked there in journalism. And then we, of course, as you mentioned, moved to Baton Rouge and we spent 6 years in Baton Rouge. I covered LSU for 5 of those years and got the call from SI in May of 2018 to join them and be national college football. And it's just it's been a great ride ever since.
Ross, it's really impressive sort of where you are in your life. And as a former publisher, I appreciate someone who's a wordsmith, and you've got to be immensely talented to begin. We got to be a good creative thinker. You have to be willing to understand how to get to the facts. And then you got to be talented in the way you convey the story. And your ability to capture stories is really incredible. 2 stories that you've been involved with just recently. You wrote a story about Jackson State, the Hail Mary that we all know. So Jacksonville State, excuse me, and the Hail Mary that stunned Florida State. And then you wrote a terrific story leading up to the University of Florida and Alabama game about the coach selection process that was, I think, really timely as it related to the incredible close game that they had with Alabama. And if we have time, we're going to talk about those. But I want to circle back for just a second. Then we'll start this part of the conversation, and then we'll take it into the next part. But I was aware of you, Ross. I followed you. I read what you wrote when you covered LSU. I was interested in the fact that you'd gone to Sports Illustrated. But it wasn't until your story about your aunt appeared in Time magazine that it hit me that I probably should have had you on the show some time ago just to talk about what you were up to these days and what I viewed as a really talented writer beyond sports, but just a talented writer. And the piece that you wrote for Time magazine probably tells that story the best. So let me ask Kyle real quick. Kyle, how much time do we have left in this segment?
4.5.
We have 4.5 minutes. So let me read, Ross, a couple of segments from that Time magazine piece that shows how good a writer you really are. And in this particular case, you wrote with your heart. And then if we run out of time in this segment, we'll pick it up on the other side. So I'll watch Kyle closely for the time, and let me go ahead and just share with you something that you wrote about your aunt, who was at the time struggling with COVID and had passed away, unfortunately, from COVID. So here's what you wrote. In normal times, the ICU is a dreadful place. Sickness lingers like fog. You can feel it, sense it, even hear it. The machinery pumping, the alarms ringing, the nurses scrambling. In pandemic times, the ICU is chilling. Death lives here. Medical staff members wear green biohazard suits, face shields, latex gloves, and shoe coverings. Stripes of red tape, isolation, they read, mark the windows and doors of individual rooms. Behind each is a patient who cannot breathe on their own, kept alive by a ventilation machine that is connected to an invasive tube running down their windpipe and into their lungs. Each room is almost identical. A person, some on their stomachs, others on their backs, sedated and paralyzed, roughly a dozen patches and pipes protruding from them, blankets hiding their naked bodies. Most of them will not make it out of here, the nurse tells me. In fact, this particular ICU in the Southern Gulf Coast, COVID-19 patients needing a ventilator have a fatality rate approaching 100%. Over the last year, hundreds of them spent their time here. 7 of them survived. I wish people could walk in my shoes for a day, the nurse muffles through a mask. The nurse is nice, but blunt. She's frustrated like so many in the medical community, she says. In this ICU, there are 25 patients battling COVID-19. She pauses before finishing the thought, 24 of them are unvaccinated. That includes the patient before her, the one with braided red curls, pale skin, and the one with rosaries draped over her bedside, laying flat on her stomach, her left ear and cheek exposed, a tube inserted in her mouth, filling her lungs with oxygen. She's in her 40s. A mother to a teenager, a wife to a husband, a daughter to an 81-year-old mom, a sister to 3 older siblings, a friend to hundreds, and an aunt, a godmother, and a kindred spirit to one lucky nephew, me. You go on to write, it's a sad story like so many in this God-forsaken world. We are surrounded by sadness. We are surrounded by sickness. These stories are playing out across our stubborn country throughout an ailing world. There are thousands of them, and this is but one. It ends in suffering. It ends in the most awful, debilitating pain a human can stand. You go on to talk about how crushing it is. And you talked about your aunt. You said a lot of interesting things, but one that you said was no one was quite like my aunt. I do mean no one. How do you describe someone who could make you both laugh and cry in the same sentence? A woman who devoted her life to helping underprivileged people with special needs. You go on. But man, that was first of all, it shows incredible ability to write, obviously, but it also shows someone who can display their heart and soul on paper and share your frustration about sort of what your aunt was experiencing at the time. And what I don't want to do is start with getting your response until we get to the other side of the deal. But when we come back from break, we'll hear more from Ross Dellenger. He's one of the coastal Mississippi people who've done well with their lives. He's from Biloxi. He's a collegiate sports writer for Sports Illustrated. And when we come back, we'll continue this conversation. See you after this break.
Coast View on SuperTalk 103.1 is brought to you by J. Allen Toyota on I-10 exit 38 Gulfport. See all the incredible inventory at allentoyota.com. And remember, when you think Toyota, think J. Allen Toyota.
Hey South Mississippi, it's Jay Allen at Jay Allen Toyota, and I got something new for you for 2021. It's the Jay Allen Certified Collection. What that means is we selected our very best inventory with under 75,000 miles and they're 6 years old or newer. That comes with a multi-point inspection, a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty, and a 3-day buyback guarantee. So come check out the Jay Allen Certified Pre-Owned Collection right here I-10 exit 38 in Gulfport or on allentoyota.com.
If Alexa's part of your life, you've got one more way to access SuperTalk. SuperTalk Mississippi is now available on Amazon Alexa devices. Once enabled, just say, Alexa, play SuperTalk Mississippi at any time and start listening. It's that easy. Just one more way to stay informed and connected with your state. Learn more at supertalk.fm/Alexa. SuperTalk Mississippi. SuperTalk Mississippi. Now available on Amazon Alexa devices.
When COVID started, Gulf Coast Business Furniture and Supply began stocking hard-to-find PPE items. When Amazon and other mega internet companies were out of stock or inflating prices, Gulf Coast Business Furniture and Supply was providing local schools and businesses vital PPE supplies at fair prices. When your office needs PPE supplies, office furniture, or products to keep your business operating, consider Gulf Coast Business Furniture and Supply. We sell that too. Buy local.
Thousands of Bulldog fans have subscribed to the Thunder and Lightning podcast. Have you? On each episode, Brian Haydad and Joel Coleman give you an inside look at your Mississippi State Bulldogs. The Thunder and Lightning podcast is free and available on demand at supertalk.fm and on your smartphone. Just search for Thunder and Lightning on iTunes, Google Play, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thunder and Lightning from SuperTalk Mississippi, covering the Bulldogs like no one else. SuperTalk Mississippi.
From outer space, visitors from another world. We've had contact with bug-eyed monsters.
This is actually a flying saucer.
Flying saucer?
I'm from another planet.
Where late nights are kind of weird.
Well, they must have a reason for their visit.
The unexplained, the weird, and the downright creepy. Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. Late nights. SuperTalk Mississippi. Feeling down? Here's your prescription for a daily dose of good news and positive vibes. Good Things with Rebecca Turner. Every afternoon, Rebecca highlights all the good things happening right here in the state you call home. Daily exposure to Good Things with Rebecca Turner may cause smiling, feelings of positivity, happiness, and even laughter. When you experience these symptoms, tell your friends to listen. Okay. Weekdays starting at 2 p.m. here on SuperTalk Mississippi and now on Amazon Alexa devices. Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast Vue. We have Ross Dellenger, native son, who's gone on to do incredible things in his journalistic career. Currently a collegiate writer at Sports Illustrated, and the son of a really decorated football and other coach here in coastal Mississippi, Stan Dellenger. It's someone both of my sons played for, incidentally, so that's important to note here. But Ross, again, when I read your piece from Time Magazine, you described what I saw. I spent time in the ICU and also the surgical ICU over at Ocean Springs, which is part of Singing River Health Systems. And what I observed was so sad. And what I tried to describe on my show on numerous occasions is literally how you opened this story about how dreadful a place the ICU was these days. But talk to me about what was behind you deciding to write that piece.
Yeah, well, I think two reasons. The first was a selfish reason, because it helped me. I find myself better after difficult experiences. Writing about those experiences seems to help me for whatever reason. And usually it's an emotional time writing those things, and sometimes my emotions pour out as I'm writing, and that I think that is just probably a helpful calming effect for me. So for one, yeah, that's certainly one reason, is that I know that it would help me based on how I've done things in the past. When I lost my grandpa a year and a half ago, I did the same thing, and those things seem to help me. Number two was to take readers into what it's the world of COVID. We hear it and we see it on TV, and we might even read about it here and there, and read about the data and the numbers and all this stuff. But to truly be impacted by it on a personal level with your family is different. And I wanted to share that experience with other people in hopes that it would encourage them, or to get the vaccine, or at least seriously consider get the vaccine. It felt like this was so preventable and avoidable that I wanted to make sure that I could touch as many people as I could. And the response has been overwhelming. Just heard directly from hundreds, probably over 300 people. And a lot of the emails and the text are fairly similar. It is, wow, great touching piece. It brought me to tears, and it has led me to reach out to my family or friend who refuses to get the vaccine. And now I have the inspiration to talk to them or to send them your story. And that's what I intended it to do.
I've had a similar going with Coast Vue during the pandemic, as it became clear that this current wave of Delta was mostly about the unvaccinated. Really urging people to get vaccinated, having experts like Dr. Nicholas Conger, who's an infectious disease doctor at Memorial, come on the show and talk about that as well. And what I hear loud and clear from nurses that I've talked to who are on the front line in the ICUs, to the doctors that are on front line dealing with COVID patients, to the hospital administrators, one of the saddest things that they hear is the bedside regret. And they all tell a very similar story, and that is, I wish I had gotten the vaccine. And one guy, his last words before he died was, I wish I had not listened to all the misinformation on Facebook. What's interesting is, I think we turn people telling that story. If we turn one, it's worth spending the time talking about it. But so much misinformation, and one day maybe you and I can visit again about that and how much that has made it difficult to get into people and to share the facts, because this misinformation somehow convinced them they had the facts. But I want to applaud you for writing the story, for using essentially your megaphone. I mean, the fact that Time Magazine printed your story, and then of course it's been shared widely. I want to, before we get too far away from it, you made a comparison to the famous Jim Valvano speech, where at the 1993 ESPY Awards. I've watched that many times. But tell before we get too far away from your aunt, why your aunt inspired you in that way.
Yeah, Jimmy Valvano, the old NC State basketball coach, I think it might have been the 93 ESPY Awards, I want to say, where he was sick and dying of cancer, and got up there to receive an award and had that famous speech where one of the lines has always kind of stuck with me, and it was his secret to life, right? To do three things every single day, cry every day, to think every day, and to laugh every day. And if you did those three things, that's kind of the secret to having a good life. And when I think about my aunt a lot, it reminded me of those things. She was an incredibly outgoing, bubbly, emotional person. Caring, incredibly caring, loving, but also, humorous, in kind of in a lot of ways, a comedian, her own comedian, our family's comedian. So she was extraordinarily smart, very smart, well-read person. So she reminded me of that. She every day she was a thinker, she was a laugher, and she was a crier. And there's been plenty of times where she's made me do all three in one sentence. So, she reminded me of that, and that was a quote that I thought would be useful. And actually, in my eulogy of her at her service, I read that quote as well, because it just tells a lot about her.
Well, I'm married to Ann Bohanovich. She's from the Bohanovich clan on the Point, and so many of her Lisa Bohanovich. She married Alan Picard and her brother Peter Bohanovich, and the whole family. But I can attest to the fact that as your aunt was so challenged in her final days, the amount of time that community around her communicated with one another about it, and the amount of praying that happened. When you say she was friend to hundreds, that is no exaggeration. She touched a lot of people, and I know that she would have wanted you to use this moment to try to bring some sanity to what you call the stubborn country, because it's true that we live in a stubborn country these days, and so I don't know how something like a vaccine and how something like a pandemic can become so politicized. And this is not a political show, so I don't really even go there on the normal day. But the fact is that there are so many challenges, and I can tell you for sure, buddy, she would have been very proud of you and the way you wrote about the situation. And I bless you for that. And I'm sorry that you've had to go through this. Let's shift gears now. It's been very interesting, as I said at the beginning of the show, that if you look at the storied past of Sports Illustrated is just really incredible. And even today, when you hear the name of Sports Illustrated, what you think about is incredible writing. I probably long before you even had the opportunity to join Sports Illustrated, you were thinking to yourself, wow, man, the people who work for this company are incredibly good writers. Is that sort of where you were long before you had an opportunity to go there?
Yeah, well, I certainly knew the track record of SI and followed a lot of their writers through the years. I growing up, I read the magazine. I didn't get it. I didn't read it regularly, probably like a lot of people did. But I certainly read it, from time to time, and it was never a place that I ever thought that I would get to. I don't know that it was a place that I even had expectation to aspire to get to something like that. But it's humbling to be here, and it's a little it can be, you're surrounded by such good talent. Part of the reason I was really brought to SI was for college football reporting, and maybe not quite as much writing, but it's evolved into that. And I'm happy about that, and I've had a lot of help with editors at SI.
Ross, let's do this. This is Ross Dellenger. He's a writer for Sports Illustrated from Biloxi. We're celebrating him and his incredible talent. When we come back, we'll continue the story about what his journey at Sports Illustrated has been like since he joined them. We'll be back after this break.
Listen live or on demand and watch episodes of Coast Vue on your laptop, desktop, or on your phone or tablet by going to supertalkmsgulfcoast.com.
Feeling down? Here's your prescription for a daily dose of good news and positive vibes. Good Things with Rebecca Turner. Every afternoon, Rebecca highlights all the good things happening right here in the state you call home. Daily exposure to Good Things with Rebecca Turner may cause smiling, feelings of positivity, happiness, and even laughter. When you experience these symptoms, tell your friends to listen.
Okay.
Weekdays starting at 2 p.m. here on SuperTalk Mississippi, and now on Amazon Alexa devices.
Hey, South Mississippi, the future has arrived. It's 2021, and at J. Allen Toyota, we're here to serve you. Want to let you know that we have Allen's lifetime warranty on every new Toyota we sell. That also comes with Toyota Care. That's 2 years and 25,000 miles of complimentary maintenance. We have a great rental department. Our service department's ready to take care of your current vehicle. We're rolling out J. Allen certified pre-owned for 2021. You got to come to I-10 exit 38 right here in Gulfport. You're going to love what we have to offer. When you think Toyota, think Allen Toyota.
What decisions are being made by state lawmakers, and how will they affect you, your family, and community? If you listen, you'll know. SuperTalk Mississippi, the SuperTalk app, and at supertalk.fm.
Hi, I'm Billy Kinder, host of Big Billy Kinder Outdoors. Here, the show Saturdays at 1, right here on SuperTalk Mississippi. Turkeys, whitetail, Grenada Lake crappie, or Gulfport redfish. We enjoy it all, especially when you're in camp with us on SuperTalk Mississippi.
When COVID started, Gulf Coast Business Furniture and Supply began stocking very hard-to-find PPE items to make our community a safer place. When Amazon and other mega internet companies were out of stock or inflating prices, Gulf Coast Business Furniture and Supply was providing local schools and businesses vital PPE supplies at fair prices. They were even sending thousands of dollars of PPE supplies free to local schools in need with help from other local business leaders. The next time your office needs PPE supplies, office furniture, or products to keep your business operating, consider a local company that supports your ball teams, cheerleaders, and area homeless. Consider Gulf Coast Business Furniture and Supply, the local guys that keep your prices fair, your service and selection excellent, and your health our business. Gulf Coast Business Furniture and Supply. We sell that too. Buy local.
SuperTalk.fm has a new look and is more informative than ever with expanded Mississippi news coverage, the latest Mississippi weather, Mississippi sports, and of course, the talk that's important to you. Every show, every podcast, and every late-breaking story. Constantly updating the news the second new developments happen. All in one place. The new SuperTalk.fm.
Hey, I'm Steve Azar, and you never know who or what you'll hear when I spend a Mississippi Minute with my friends. Talking to Paul Thorne, Mississippi true treasure, really incredible recording artist, singer-songwriter, has been doing it a long time, doing it the right way.
It's almost like a Forrest Gump thing because, I was a boxer, / I worked in a furniture factory, / I had a gig 2 nights a week playing my acoustic guitar in a pizza restaurant, / I was in the National Guard. And,
Wow.
all this stuff was going on at the same time. / / I had a writing contract with Rick Hall and Fame.
In a Mississippi Minute. Be sure to check out In a Mississippi Minute with me, Steve Azar, right here on SuperTalk Mississippi, the SuperTalk Mississippi app, and now available on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher.
For something new and unique in talk radio, take a listen to The Ben Shapiro Show. Every day, we're driving the debate in America with the fastest moving, hardest hitting, most comprehensive fact-based commentary on the radio. We don't hold back. We never shy away from telling you the truth. Our show is a meeting place of ideas. We have the most important guests and the biggest thinkers in America.
Weeknights at 9.
For something new and unique in talk radio, take a listen to The Ben Shapiro Show
on Super Talk, Mississippi.
And now, it's Coast Vue with Ricky Mathews. Brought to you by J. Allen Toyota and AGJ Systems and Networks on Super Talk 103.1 FM.
Welcome back to Coast Vue. One of the real joys of this, you can call it a job. I do this show every day, but I'm mostly retired these days. But I've had this opportunity to reconnect with the community. I forgot how much I learned being a publisher, so it's been great, contributing what I've learned to make the conversations with each of my guests as rich as they possibly can be. And today's conversation is really no exception. You can call him a Biloxi boy who's done well. His name is Ross Dellenger. Got great connections here in Biloxi. Lives in Washington, D.C. now and works for Sports Illustrated. But, when we went to break, you were talking about they may not have necessarily hired you for your writing, but let me tell you, they did hire you for your writing because you are an immensely talented man. I want to go back to the story that you wrote about, this is the headline, Dan Mullen, Chip Kelly, Scott Frost, and the coaching search that remade Florida football. Really a timely story, actually, leading up to it. But I want to this is one paragraph I'm going to pull from it. And then I'll be interested to know sort of how the rest of the story turned out, that close game that happened, and get your thoughts about that. But Gators at 2-0, ranked number 11, are big underdogs, having lost much of the talent that helped Coach Dan Mullen start his career by winning more games at the University of Florida. 29 wins over 35 games than any coach in school history, even ahead of Urban Meyer and Steve Spurrier. The Tide lost plenty of talent too, but as Nick Saban's football factory often does, it has churned out replacement specimens. I just love the way you said that, actually. So, looking back on that, it probably, when you write a story like that, it really does set it up well for you when you watch the game to kind of know a little bit more of the story behind the story. But what did you observe when you watched that game?
Well, I guess it depended on what quarter it was. Certainly the early on during the game, I observed what I expected that I would see, which was pretty much complete, domination from Alabama. And then, slowly, over the next few plays and couple hours, you saw a Florida team that made adjustments in running the football and adjustments defensively to not just kind of hang around, but come pretty much all the way back. And it was impressive to see. And after the game, Nick Saban credited actually Dan Mullen quite a bit for his offensive strategy against the Tide, and using the speed option and using the run on the edges and just running the football like they did in creative ways. And you could see it up from the press box. It was impressive, and it came down to what a lot of games come down to. It is a game of inches, and Florida could have tied the game on a 2-point conversion by getting 3 yards. They couldn't do it, and then a few minutes later, Alabama extended what was a game-winning drive by converting a 3rd and 2 and getting 2 yards. And sometimes that's what it comes down to in football.
Yeah, there was an interesting story you wrote, though, about how they ultimately came to know Dan Mullen. There were some frustrating times leading up to that. I think at one point I remember you saying something like members of the search committee, basically all they could do is just go to the local watering hole and get a drink. But it was an interesting story to sort of find out what was going on behind the scenes for this place, University of Florida, as you pointed out, has all this incredible talent, all this money, all this opportunity. But, man, it was a frustrating coach search for them, wasn't it?
It was. I love to go back and do the retrospective of coaching searches because it always reveals just some interesting nuggets that they're so secretive that a lot of times they don't come out in reporting while the search is going on. So I like to go back, and that was the third or fourth one I've done where I go back and kind of look at what happened. And that one was especially interesting because, of course, Scott Strickland had so many emotional and business ties and relationships to Mississippi and Mississippi State. Jackson, Mississippi boy, and worked and went to school at Mississippi State, was AD at Mississippi State before he left for Florida. And the last thing he wanted to do, I think, was go back and take Mississippi State's most successful football coach. And so to avoid that, I think he went to some different avenues at the start of the search. And that was Chip Kelly, who was at the time out of coaching football and was an analyst for ESPN. And so he chased Chip Kelly, and I think, probably would have offered Chip the job or did offer him the job. But Chip decided, despite meeting with Florida 2 different times, to take the UCLA job, go out west where he had so much success at Oregon. And so he did that, and Scott Strickland kind of turned into the UCF coach at the time, which was Scott Frost, who's now at Nebraska, and then Dan Mullen. And it was kind of between those two. And, as the legend goes, that they called Scott Frost on a Saturday morning after Thanksgiving in 2017. And he said, "I'll call you back." And he never did. And so Scott Strickland called Dan Mullen and worked out a deal with him. And then, of course, the next day, Scott Frost, as we all know, was hired by Nebraska.
Well, you did a great job of kind of nailing that down. The other story that I mentioned at the beginning of the show was your look back inside the Jacksonville State Hail Mary that stunned Florida State. It's going to be interesting to see if there's a lasting impact of that. What's your read on that?
Well, yeah, it's just another low point for the Seminoles. It's been a long 3 or 4 years of a lot of low points. In that may have been the lowest, to lose at home to an FCS program after having a 10-point lead in the second half. They allowed a 99-yard drive, and then they allowed that drive that ended kind of on that final heave down the field. It's hard to kind of describe what the situation that the Florida State football program is in. I don't know how it got this bad. It always starts a lot of times with, the recruiting part of it. And late during Jimbo Fisher's tenure there, I think that you could see the recruiting part of it getting bad. And then they hired Willie Taggart and gave him 1.5 years before firing him. And now Norvell is going to have about the same, if not a worse record through 1.5 years. And it's just shocking what's happened to that program. It really is. And it's just another low point there. Sooner or later, teams, FBS teams, Power 5 teams specifically, are going to realize that they ought not to schedule Jacksonville State. They're an FCS team, but they get a lot of Power 5 transfer players. And the 2 players, the quarterback and the receiver that made that play, one was transfer from Duke, the other was transfer from Clemson. So they're always a competitive team, and really they have been a powerhouse in the FCS for about 6, 8 years. And you remember a few years ago, people remember them for taking Auburn to overtime. So it's just kind of a bad move, I think, to schedule them if you're an FBS program.
So we got about a minute left. Tell me what you're working on now for Sports Illustrated.
Well, right now we're in the middle of a lot of things going on in college sports. It's one issue after another. I find myself, instead of a lot of times getting to write about games or players or coaches, I'm writing about the issues and sports business type issues around the sport. And right now, specifically this week, is college football playoff and the expansion of the college football playoff and why it may or may not happen. But there are a range of issues right now. The conference realignment, obviously, that we've seen with Oklahoma and Texas, and then Houston, Cincinnati, UCF going to the Big 12 with BYU, and just the whole landscape of college sports is changing. And then, that doesn't even mention name, image, and likeness, which is a pretty big deal right now. So it's one thing after another.
Well, it's going to be really fascinating to watch the impact of paying players on the game. And I, for one, I don't know where you stand on it, but I, for one, think we're late getting there because some of these young men will go on to pro careers, some of them will not. And, they've been robbed of the opportunity to make a living even while they're in college. And hopefully, I'm sure Sports Illustrated will be all over that, like you always are, covering the in-depth, every angle of the dangle, and talking to all the smart people and doing a great job. But listen, man, we're at the end of this segment. I'll give you the chance to have the last word.
Well, Ricky, I appreciate you having me. Certainly, remember you at the Sun Herald, and as a newspaper I grew up reading, and Doug Barber, and helping me kind of want to aspire to be a sports writer, and so I appreciate you having me on, and certainly love the Gulf Coast and return quite a bit, and I hope my story of my aunt will help others.
Well, by the way, Doug Barber's amazing, and thanks for inspiring me with your story of your aunt. I'm so sorry that you had to write that, obviously. God bless you, my friend, and good luck to you. And we'll have you back in a few months and just check in and see how things are going. This has been Ross Dellenger from Biloxi, who works for Sports Illustrated. Have a great day, and we'll come back with Kyle after this break. We'll see you in just a second.
You can also listen live to SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1 on your Amazon Alexa devices. Once you've enabled the skill, just say, Alexa, open SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast.
SuperTalk.fm has a new look and is more informative than ever with expanded Mississippi news coverage, the latest Mississippi weather, Mississippi sports, and of course, the talk that's important to you. Every show, every podcast, and every late-breaking story. Constantly updating the news the second new developments happen. All in one place. The new SuperTalk.fm.
Hey, South Mississippi, it's Jay Allen at Jay Allen Toyota, and I got something new for you for 2021. It's the Jay Allen Certified Collection. What that means is we selected our very best inventory with under 75,000 miles, and they're 6 years old or newer. That comes with a multi-point inspection, a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty, and a 3-day buyback guarantee. So come check out the Jay Allen Certified Pre-Owned Collection right here, I-10 exit 38 in Gulfport, or on allentoyota.com.
When COVID started, Gulf Coast Business Furniture and Supply began stocking hard-to-find PPE items. When Amazon and other mega internet companies were out of stock or inflating prices, Gulf Coast Business Furniture and Supply was providing local schools and businesses vital PPE supplies at fair prices. When your office needs PPE supplies, office furniture, or products to keep your business operating, consider Gulf Coast Business Furniture and Supply. We sell that too. Buy local.
SuperTalk Mississippi, your new home for the Ben Shapiro Show.
We don't hold back. We never shy away from telling you the truth.
The most electrifying national talk show on air today.
We have the most important guests and the biggest thinkers in America.
Ben Shapiro, brutally breaking down the issues of the day.
From politics to pop culture, we take a look at all of it. So don't miss out.
Weeknights at 9.
For something new and unique in talk radio, take a listen to The Ben Shapiro Show.
On SuperTalk Mississippi. SuperTalk Mississippi.
Just seems to me people have so much invested in not telling the truth.
When you want the truth.
Simply because it might hurt some feelings.
And nothing but the truth.
Lose some subscribers.
You want the Gallo Radio Show.
I just think in this audience, you still believe that if you tell the truth, you come out ahead.
The Gallo Radio Show.
And if you tell yourself otherwise, you're lying to yourself.
Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Thousands of Bulldog fans have subscribed to the Thunder and Lightning podcast. Have you? On each episode, Brian Haydad and Joel Coleman give you an inside look at your Mississippi State Bulldogs. The Thunder and Lightning podcast is free and available on demand at supertalk.fm and on your smartphone. Just search for Thunder and Lightning on iTunes, Google Play, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thunder and Lightning from SuperTalk Mississippi, covering the Bulldogs like no one else.
Hey, I'm Steve Azar, and you never know who or what you'll hear when I spend a Mississippi Minute with my friends. We're talking to Del Berra. Take me back to growing up and what it was like in the household with a dad like Yogi Berra.
You know, we grew up with his funny sayings. You know, I remember Dad managing the Mets, and me, Larry, and Timmy are watching the game on TV. And all of a sudden, two streakers run out of the stands on TV, and the camera flips away from them. So when he gets home, me, Larry, and Timmy say, "Hey, Dad, those streakers, what were they, boys or girls? We need to know." And Dad looked us right in the eye and said, "I couldn't tell. They had bags over their heads."
In a Mississippi Minute. Be sure to check out In a Mississippi Minute with me, Steve Azar, right here on SuperTalk Mississippi, the SuperTalk Mississippi app, and now available on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher.
This is Coast View with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. I could have done 3 shows with Ross Dellenger. There's so much to talk about with that incredible young man who's done really well. But another Biloxian done well, living in Washington, D.C., now working for Sports Illustrated. Man, what an inspiring young man, and a great writer. And I'm so sorry about his aunt. His mother is and father, Stan and Rose Dellenger, just terrific people here in Biloxi. His sister Evelyn actually went to school with my son Jordan. She's a speech pathologist. And Ann shared something with me. I just wanted to read it to you real quick. This is what Ross wrote about his father on May the 3rd. And this is what he said. In the last decade, Coach Stan Dellenger has won 5 high school state championships in 3 different sports: football, girls track, and boys track. Last weekend, his St. Patrick girls claimed a 3-peat, winning the state title for the 3rd consecutive time, and his boys won the championship too. Coach Dell is a great coach, a better man, and a damn good dad too. And then he says, "Congrats, Pop." I just love that. But, you know, Kyle, come on in for just a second. Man, we're lucky that we get to check in with all these amazing people who are doing incredible things, not just here in coastal Mississippi, but coastal Mississippians that have gone off to make a contribution to the world. And, you know, Ross is just another great example of that, isn't he?
He really is. You know, I think if you ask people outside of Mississippi who is from Mississippi, I think the majority of people in the United States don't really know.
Yeah.
You know, you really have to be that person to say, here's our resume. This is what we stand for. This is who come from Mississippi. And they really, I did not realize. And, you know, it's sad that it's that way, but, you know, it is what it is.
It is sad that it's that way, but, you know, the birthplace of American music, I love the blues story, but there's so many incredible, you know, country music artists and rock and roll legends Elvis Presley, for example, and the worldwide impact they have on some of the greatest bands of our time. And then, of course, you've got great journalists and great literary writers and playwrights, and the list goes on. Artists. I mean, the story of Walter Anderson. I mean, we mentioned yesterday that Robert St. John's is just completing a new book on probably the most in-depth book on Walter Anderson yet, this Renaissance man that made his mark. But the list goes on and on. But just Ross is just another one. But the fact that his aunt died of COVID and was loved by so many, and that he wrote about it with such affection and such sad knowledge, unfortunately, and that it gets run in Time magazine and really shared around the world. Once again, we have a Mississippian who's gone on to do amazing things, and he's proud to be from Biloxi, and it's great to hear that, isn't it?
It really is, and I've read that story too, and I guess I've pretty much got one of the things. I cried when I read that story this morning. The show. It really was from the heart, very well written, and it's sad that we have to fight with people over the vaccination. I'm like him. I don't want to harp on it. I don't want to be the person to stand on a box and say, you need to do this, blah, blah, blah. Just here's the facts. But unfortunately, it's kind of gotten to where, everybody said, well, it's not approved. It's not approved. So now that it's approved, here's what I've seen this morning. Their new slant on it is, this is the meme that I saw today. The FDA approved does not mean scientifically proven. It means that a business deal has been made.
Oh, Lord. That's so sad.
Stand on now.
It's so sad. I had just a troubling conversation with a family member from Alabama who said that the monoclonal antibody infusion was just approved last Thursday, which I'm saying, where would you get that information that's been used for months now? And, blaming Biden for holding it up, so to speak. It just so much misinformation. And my goal has been people are going to make the right decision. And hopefully, if you give them the best information available and somehow get them away from their misinformation, maybe they'll make a good choice. Yep. But when, he said in his story, we are surrounded by sickness. These stories are playing out across our stubborn country, throughout our ailing world. There are thousands of them, and this is but one. It's just so extraordinarily well put. But, man, you find a really, really good writer, what I call a wordsmith, and you give them some pain, and the words will spill out on paper in ways that inspire people. And that's what Ross did for Time magazine.
Yeah, that just reading that article and watching the progression of how the whole story felt, it seemed like it was an easy write. Not that it's an easy write emotionally, but to physically put the words down to tell that story. It was, it's like almost like songs when people say it took me 20 seconds to write a number one hit that sold millions and millions. It just comes naturally. It comes easy to you when it's something that's passionate and something that really hits to the heart.
Well, to be inspired by Jim Valvano, I think is the way you say his last name, from his 1993 ESPY speech, but that everyone should laugh, think, and cry every single day. And he said his aunt inspired him in that way. And, man, that's really good advice. It means, to cry every day, you have to have empathy for others. You have to be aware of the human condition. To laugh means you have to have humility and just say, come on, man, we can't take everything seriously. And thinking, gosh dang it, I wish more people would think for themselves. As my friend Mark Henderson from Lazy Magnolia said many times on our show, that too many people wait to open up Facebook today to see what it is they need to think today, as opposed to coming up with their own thoughts. Laugh, think, and cry every day. It's great advice, isn't it, buddy?
It is very good advice, and we have about 10 seconds, so.
God bless you, my friend. It's great. Hey, it's been a special edition of Coast Vue. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.
Follow SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1 on Facebook. Facebook.com/SuperTalk MS Coast 103.1.